You're listening to the Iron and Grace podcast, so pick up your sword and join the good fight.
So Colossians 3:23 through 4:1. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ, for the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. Masters, treat your bondservants justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. What's up, brother?
What's up? This is Drew.
This is Kyle. Welcome to Iron and Grace.
So, talking about work and specifically business today. I'm going to hopefully quiz Kyle on a few questions and kind of get into his brain as a business owner and kind of unpack it a little bit about what it's like to run a business as a Christian and what does that kind of look like.
Right on. Yeah, I've been involved in business or in business since I was a kid.
Yeah.
My dad owned a construction company, and I worked for other people for a short time and then opened my own business pretty young. So I don't know that I have a lot of good answers, but I have a lot of questions that hopefully we can work through together.
I think that's good, though. I think it's a topic that's probably not talked about that much. There's some stuff I see on YouTube that talks about it, but it's definitely kind of a gray area that I think your firsthand experience hopefully will give, because you are a Christian that runs a business. So,
this is true.
You deal with those questions on a daily basis and have to make decisions on how you run it. So I think we can start, like we talked about, kind of growing up in a household that was run and stewarded over by a business owner.
Sure. So my dad owned Yoakum Construction when I was a kid. We built houses, and that was, my first job. Obviously, was doing construction when I was probably, 8 years old, I guess, when I started going to work with him whenever I wasn't in school. And my dad is a believer. He's a Christian, and he ran his business. I looking back as a believer the best he could, but I definitely saw some of the challenges that he faced, to the degree that I could understand them as a kid and up through my teen years with employees and homeowners and banks and subcontractors and, in the construction world, all the things that you deal with there. And there are definite challenges that if you are not a believer are easier to deal with than if you are a believer. There's that famous phrase, business is business. Well, if you're a follower of Christ, then business is business is not, I think, a good phrase.
Yeah.
Because that phrase indicates, well, do whatever you need to do to benefit your business, and that is the end goal. And that's not, I don't think that's correct.
I think
for a believer.
That's a good point. Something, as me and my father had a house-flipping business for a couple of years, and, the hustle culture that exists online of succeed at all costs, where your priorities lie have to be set with a Christian foundation as a business owner and not on that hustle culture that is so prevalent in our world. And I think that speaks to that. I think you have to be accepting of the fact that your business may suffer for your steadfastness in holding to your values.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of hustle involved, and there should be and has to be. But again, just the more, and I have to win at all costs is, I don't think that's the best path.
Yeah. So do you think growing up, that's something that I've always thought about in a household where, your parental structure is structured around business. Do you think there were pros and cons? Looking at someone that owns a business and has a family, do you think there are pros and cons growing up that, your father maybe been around more or less, or obviously it enabled you to grow a skill set with your hands that you utilize today?
Yeah. I mean, the positives definitely outweigh the negatives in my mind, at least, which is why I went the way that I did. And maybe it's just what wired me to go the way I did. But, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, you're a business owner, you make your own schedule. You're the one in control of when you have to be at work, when you don't have to be at work. Kind of.
Yeah, kind of.
Because if you're the business owner, then you kind of need to be there, and, all the weight falls on your shoulders. So with the freedom to make those decisions also comes the responsibility to make those decisions well.
Mm-hmm.
It also, I was exposed to the stress and anxiety that it causes, pretty early on. I saw my dad wrestle with problems with employees and jobs not going well and there not being enough money and all of the, kind of downsides to owning a small business.
Yeah.
Which for some reason did not deter me from doing it myself. But I had a huge amount of, and still do, have a huge amount of respect for, my dad, for the business that he built. At a time, we were building, some pretty high-end homes in Northeast Ohio, and he had a pretty successful business going. When the market tanked in 2008, which was after I left for Connecticut, that kind of crushed the business, and he ended up going another direction. But it made me very proud to see what my dad was doing, and definitely that's what pushed me in that direction.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've noticed as I've gotten to know you, and I would imagine it stems from a lot of that, is your self-reliance and an ability to see things through, and make something out of something that is nothing, just like this podcast studio, and, how you created this environment that we're able to do this out of nothing, really. You had it in your shop already, but your ability to create, I guess, is kind of
there is a blessing and a curse there, because with the initial desire to create something or to start something, sometimes it's hard to read the writing on the wall when things are.
I get that. Yeah,
you need to
quit or go a different direction,
or cut it off, or do something different.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going to be a business owner, I don't think you can really have a whole lot of quit in you, because at some point that looks pretty tempting.
Yeah, that was one thing that you talked about. Like when we had our house flipping business, that was one thing that was taxing on me. I was young, and seeing my dad still worked a full-time job, so seeing the stress that I know it put on him was very taxing for me, and that was part of the reason, we dissolved the business and I went into law enforcement. I mean, there were other reasons, but that stress of being solely responsible, I think is something that if you've never run a business or been involved in business, you don't truly understand.
Yeah. Well, and so it's just the tip of the iceberg where faith comes into play.
Yeah.
Because there's also a huge sense of pride.
Yeah.
There. It's my business. I'm the boss. I'm the one in charge. I make all the decisions. All the weight falls on me. All the responsibility is mine. All the burden is mine. And that's something that I have wrestled with quite a bit, is it's yes, I started the business. Yes, I've built the business. Yes, it's my reputation, but it's actually not. It was given to me by God. God is the one that I do these things for, or at least I'm supposed to be doing these things for. He's the one that has provided me with the skill. He's the one that's provided me with the work ethic. He's the one that provides me with the work that comes into the shop. So keeping that in perspective on a day-to-day, when, and we're not as big of a business. I mean, we're a small business. I've always been a small business, but we're smaller today than we were, say, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And there was definitely a time when it was easy to open the door of the shop, kind of with your chest puffed out. Like, oh, I built this.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And I think, like we've talked about in prior podcasts, of where your priority lies, I think sets the bar for how much of that pride you really dive into. Like if your priorities are your marriage, your family, in God, not in that order, but just you set your priorities, you put the major where it should be on the major, you can pivot.
Yeah.
Whether it's you running this business now, whether you're running the same type of business or pivot or go completely a different direction, what is steady is your faith, and what is steady is your family and your spouse. And that's something that I've always thought about too, because I transitioned out of house flipping into fitness and then into law enforcement, and who knows what may come in the future, but we have to keep what matters steady throughout it all.
Right.
We know that we're called to work. It's clear in Genesis that men and women too are called to work. We're called to create, to tend to the garden, to steward well. That's clear. And how we do that, it matters, but it's not the only thing that matters.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. And when you do it under your own power, you can build. I think you can build wealth there for sure. You can build a big successful in air quotes by the world's terms business. And I know a lot of guys that have done that. I mean, I'm in a position where my business is essentially building toys for people
Really
that have extra money.
businesses.
And a lot of those people that have money are business owners.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with in the past all kinds.
Yeah.
Ones that were believers, ones that were not believers, ones that were fulfilled, ones that were very empty. And I've seen very successful businesses run by people who were not content.
Yeah.
Who were very empty and unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I've never wanted that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there have been times when I've trended in that direction just because it's, again, it is hard to keep the balance. But when you do keep things in proper perspective, when you do have God at the front of the line and in the middle of everything,
yeah,
and you keep the business in its proper place, it may not always be as financially profitable. Maybe, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the fulfillment that comes from it, I feel is greater.
Yeah.
And also the weight that it puts on your heart for it has to be financially successful and it has to be my source of fulfillment goes away a lot because your fulfillment is not coming from this great thing that I built. It's coming from God.
Yeah. And it's not self-reliance in the sense of I'm relying on my own efforts, but you're relying on God for your daily needs.
I just got a message. It is regular training tonight.
Okay. Then now we know. Yeah. And I mean, like, with Donnie running a gym too, I have a lot of respect for y'all because, with law enforcement now, it's pretty secure as far as like, I could get fired. I could do something stupid. They could just let me go for whatever reason. But, I'm trusting in the institution that is government for my paycheck. And I have a lot of respect for you guys as business owners that there's an uncertainty there, I think, that can haunt you.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
As I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes more than other times. Yeah. And Donnie's a good example of, when he really gave his business over to his faith, when he really put God at the forefront. Yeah. His business has grown. Yeah. God saw his heart and said, you've put me first. Yeah. And because of that, I can bless you with this because I know that your heart won't be stained by the success.
And you're going to steward it well.
And you will steward it well, which he has and he does. Absolutely. Not that he's running a, multi-million-dollar business, but, there are more students there now than there were 5 years ago. Yeah. So hopefully there is some financial benefit to that. Yeah. And it's not because he's pursuing worldly riches. Yeah. It's literally because he is pursuing a closer relationship with God. And he has said, and we've talked about this, he and I have talked about this dozens of times. So God, this is not my gym. This is your gym. Use me in it in the way that you see fit. And God says, I hear your heart and I know that you are faithful. Yeah. So here, you've been faithful with little. I will give you more. Yeah.
And so going back to your story too, do you think you've transitioned, you obviously went to Connecticut, you transitioned out of building houses with your father. How did you transition into what you do now?
Okay, so I'll backtrack just a little bit. When I was a kid, my dad used to tell me about the '67 Camaro that he had when he was younger. He didn't have it anymore. He sold it when he was in the Army. But I always had this picture in my head of his red '67 Camaro, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever. And when I was 14, I think I was 14 because I'm not sure if I had met Jerry Lynn yet. I found a '72 Chevelle for, I think it was $800, and it was in Northeast Ohio. Yeah, we call it the Rust Belt for a reason. Yeah, this car was terrible. But I bought that car at 14, 15, and Dad bought a $200 Harbor Freight welder, and I just started taking things apart and started trying to fix things. I kind of taught myself how to weld with that crappy little flux core welder. Dad at one point brought home a scrap washing machine for me to cut apart and use for patches. So that's pretty cool. There are patches in the floor of that car made out of the side of a washing machine. Cool. Like the textured metal from the side of a washing machine. And I don't want to say I was good at it because at that point I was not. But I kind of had a little bit of a knack for shape, which is a term that we use in the metal shaping world. Yeah. Shape is a piece of metal that it's not just bent on one plane; it's contoured multi-directionally. Yeah. So I had just a little bit of a knack for that and for the bodywork. So I never actually got that car on the road. By the way, I sold it in pieces years later. But from there, I'd buy another beater car and another beater car and another beater car, and started doing my own body work and paint work and modifications really poorly on these cars. But I just fell more and more in love with that process. And then my senior year in high school, let's see, try and get my timeline relatively close here. 15 and a half, I met Jerry Lynn. And when I got my driver's license at 16, I basically moved in with her. At that point, I got a job, not just working with my dad, but at a truck wash called the Blue Beacon in Hubbard, which was where Jerry Lynn lived. I lived about 30 minutes away, and I got a job by her so that I could be closer to her. And I also transferred high schools to her high school. My parents, I don't know how I conned my parents into any of this, but
it worked out.
It worked out. So my junior year, I actually went to Hubbard High School where she went to school. Yeah. Which was 30 minutes away from where I
originally went,
quote unquote, lived with my parents. And then my senior year, she switched. Would have been her junior year, my senior year. She switched to doing school online because she was helping take care of her niece. So it was just, she was missing too much school. Yeah. Helping babysit her niece or raise her niece. And so she transferred out to what I think it was called ECOT, Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow. Yeah. And I went to the vocational school. We called it TCTC. Yeah. Trumbull County Technical Center, I think was what it was, for auto body. And I had the best auto body instructor. Now, I was working full-time at this point. I was working at the Beacon, painting or washing semis, staying with Jerry Lynn, getting up, driving 30 minutes back to Champion to go to tech school. And I didn't care any for school at all, but I loved this shop class. Yeah. And Randy Hess was that teacher's name, and I respected him. He was a good instructor. He was a good body guy, and he knew how to talk to young men. Yeah. He didn't handle us with kid gloves. He was kind of rough around the edges. He was a man's man. He was a great guy. And he basically ran me through a 2-year program in a year. Because you're supposed to start that program in junior year. I started my senior year. And he gave me the opportunity to do a lot of things that the second year students were doing my first year. and really taught me the right way to use a hammer and dolly, how to fix a dent right, how to do body work and painting, all those things as much as you can with a kid in a school year.
Yeah.
So I get about through my senior year, which he's also the only reason I graduated, because I skipped so much of my other schooling that I shouldn't have been able to graduate.
Yeah.
I don't know if I failed all my other classes, but it was
Close.
It was close. But I do graduate. I get out. I apply for Barron Institute of Technology, which was like a kind of like a YO-Tech program, like a custom car builder tech school. It was kind of a sham, but regardless. And that was in Connecticut. So I get out of high school, go up to Connecticut for this school, and did their custom auto body program. And Jerry Lynn moved up there with me when I moved out of the dorms, got my own apartment. She moved in with me, and I got a job part-time at a small restoration shop, and just really found that I had a knack for the metalwork side of things. Even our class, we had one class where we did like patch repair panels. We had to make our own patch panels. And I made the bottom of this fender, and I'd done things similar to that on my own before, but never to that extent. And I made my patch panel, and my teacher was like, "How did you do that?" With essentially just hand tools, no English wheel, no anything like that. This was just hammer and dolly and anvil. And he's like, "How'd you do that?" And I don't know. It's just I can read the shape, and that was kind of the point I realized that okay, this is probably something I should pursue.
Yeah.
And I worked at that small restoration shop, which was just me and another guy in his garage. And, geez, I could fill a whole episode with stories from that place and that guy. But he kind of took me and Jerry Lynn under his wing as not a father figure, but a little bit of a mentor in that time, because we had nobody. It was just us. We had no one. Really helped us out a lot and taught me, the wrong way how to do a lot of things, but taught me a lot. I left there and worked at Command Aerospace for a little while, painting helicopters.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It was not at all. Everybody says that, and it sounds cool, but you can only spray flat gray and flat black for so long before it gets really, really old.
It's like when so many people around here work at the shipyard, and it's like, that's cool, but their day to day is doing the same task over and over and over and over.
Yeah, we did a lot of work on painting Blackhawk blades. I can't tell you how many Blackhawk blades I painted. Oh my gosh, it's so awful. Just flat black, 30 feet long. Anyways, I was there for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, and we had run through the blade contract that we had. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall and thought, I think I see layoffs coming. It was me and one other guy, both started at the same time. We were about the same age. We were both going to the same program. And I thought, there's a good chance that they're going to cut us. We're second shift. We're not the primary guys, and we're the lowest on the totem pole here. So I think we're going to get cut. So I started kind of sending my resume out all over the place, all kinds of restoration shops, anywhere I thought did what I thought I wanted to do. And again, at this point I was 19. So, how much do you really know at 19? But my dad had moved down to Virginia at this point. Like, remember I said before that his business in 2008 kind of took a dive. So he had moved down to Virginia in 2008. So we were looking kind of in that area, and I sent my resume out to every shop I could find in Hampton Roads. And I got one call back from this guy, Dan. No, I guess I can name the shop. It's not a big deal. Dan from Phantom Works. And we were in Connecticut. We were living in Connecticut. We were probably 2.5 hours south of Boston. He calls me, and we had a couple conversations, and he said, your resume looks pretty good. I've got a contracting job that I do, and I've got a meeting in Boston meet me in Boston and we'll have an interview. So it's wintertime in Connecticut. I'm like, well, yeah, okay, of course. Fantastic. 2.5 hours from here, I can make that drive. Well, I drove a little Toyota Echo at that point. Two-wheel drive, 4-cylinder, 5-speed Toyota Echo. And the night before I was supposed to go to this interview, it snowed. Connecticut snow.
Yeah. Not Virginia snow.
We're not talking inches.
Or North Carolina snow.
We're talking feet. So that morning I get up and I shovel enough of my driveway to get my car to the road. And I ended up having to push my car out of my parking spot over the ice and through the snow to get to the road because it wouldn't move. And I drive up to Boston, have the interview with Dan. And he said, everything sounds good. I like the way you talk. Why don't you come down and work for me for a week and see how that goes, and we'll go from there. So I did. I don't remember the timeline between interviewing him and going down there. It's been a long time, but so we came down to visit, and I worked for him at the shop for a week. And at the end of that week, he said, "You've got a job if you want it."
That's cool.
And there's a whole lot about that business that we'll touch on just a little bit. I don't want to disparage him, but there were some things there that gave me examples that I didn't necessarily want to follow. Yeah. So I went back up to Connecticut, put my 2 weeks in, and I had left my Echo down here, took my dad's truck up there, rented a 5x7 U-Haul trailer, put everything that would fit in the truck and trailer, and left everything else. And came down here with 2 weeks' notice. We found an apartment in Virginia Beach that we really could not afford, but it was the only thing we could find. And I started working at Phantom Works, which was a restoration shop in Norfolk. And the group of guys that were working there were some really talented guys working there. Well, one of them, actually, he's the one that upholstered this seat. Josh Littleton.
That's cool.
Yeah, Josh Littleton was working there. He was the paint and body guy at that point. Super talented guy. Yeah, just all around good dude. Now he owns Classic Canvas. He does upholstery work. But he was there. This guy Joel was there. Bob was the mechanic who he passed away a few years ago. But he had a really talented crew of guys there that wanted to do good work. Yeah. And he, at that point, I think he was still part-time in the military. I don't remember exactly, but we had a group of guys that really wanted to do good work restoring these cars. And he gave me the opportunity to do my best, which at that point didn't look like it does now. I didn't know then what I know now. But he kind of gave us the environment where we could hone our skills a little bit and get better and better. And we did. We built some really great cars, and then he bought another facility, and we moved into that other facility. And long story short, he gets a TV show, which was not something that I was particularly interested in. And some of the business tactics that he was using, I didn't particularly care for. And I was very unhappy. Yeah. I liked what we did. I liked the work that I did. I didn't like the way some of the employees got treated. I didn't like the way he interacted with a lot of the customers. And I was just miserable and anxious. Yeah. And at this point, Jerry Lynn and I had gotten married. We had Rose, our first kid. And I was doing men's group every Wednesday night with a handful of buddies from church. And we were talking about me potentially moving away to work at another shop, maybe on the West Coast or somewhere else. And I had mentioned in the past the idea of opening a business. And my buddy Will at the time, we're having this discussion, and he's like, well, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? Because I was miserable there. Yeah. I was miserable. And I told him, I said, I'd love to open my own shop. I'm like, but I'm 23, 24 years old. I have a mortgage. I've got a wife. I've got a kid. Like, it's my job to provide for my family. Like, that's what my priority is. And he flicked the right chord. He looked at me and he said, you say that and you call yourself a Christian. One of these days, you're going to have to really, truly trust God to provide for your family.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, okay. And I went home that night and I told Jerry Lynn, we're going to open a shop. And she's like, okay. Because it was something that we had kicked around. And again, having a business owner as a dad, it was always in my mind that I wanted to open a business. And she's like, well, okay, we'll start planning. And I'm like, no, we're going to do this. I'm going to tell Dan tomorrow that this is what I'm going to do. And she's like, he's going to kick you out. Now, to back up a little ways, Josh, the one that upholstered this seat, he had left, I don't know, 6 months prior to that maybe. And when he quit, Dan was not happy.
Yeah.
And I think he anticipated a bit of an exodus from the shop.
Yeah.
Because that core, that initial crew that was there, the guys that were left, nobody was happy. The environment there just wasn't great. And he called me when Josh quit, and he said, or he asked, "Are you leaving too?" I said, "I don't have any plans to go anywhere right now."
Yeah.
So no. And he said, "Well," and I'm do my best to not get this. I doubt he'll listen to this, but just in case he does, I'll do my best to get it right. I don't want to misquote him. But essentially, he told me, if you're to leave, I need 6 months notice.
Yeah.
I can't have you leave on 2 weeks notice. Okay. And I'm like, well, I can't promise that. I said, but I will tell you this. If I make the decision that it's time for me to go, I will tell you when I make that decision. You have my word that if I decide I'm leaving, I'll tell you when I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's the best I can do for you. Which again, I was young. I thought that was an agreement that was more than reasonable. So I told Jerry Lynn, fast forward to that night, I told her, I said, no, I gave him my word.
That I'm going to tell him.
I'm going to tell him that this is my plan. And she's like, okay. And so the next day, and I was always, or at least I tried my hardest to be the first one there and the last one gone. I ran the fab shop.
Yeah.
So I had 3 guys or something that kind of worked under me that I guess I managed a little bit. So I would get there first, try and get going in the shop best I could so that, when Dan got there, things were already moving. I wanted to make his day as smooth as possible because when his day was smooth, everybody else's day was smooth. If his day wasn't smooth, nobody's day was smooth. So I got there early. I'm working in the shop. Dan comes in and he walks by. I said, good morning. I said, Dan, we need to talk.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, what's up? I said, remember I told you that when I decided it was time to go, I would tell you. I said, well, I'm going to open my own shop. I said, I don't know when yet. So this is not, I'm leaving today. I'm not quitting per se, but I told you that when I decided to do this, that I would tell you. I gave you my word. And he fired back at me a couple things. I don't remember what, and kind of walked away. And then he called me into his office an hour later and basically said, well, if we're going to have to learn to live without you, we're going to start today.
Wow.
And then we had about a 45-minute conversation, him yelling at me and being unhappy, which was, reasonable enough. And I went out of his office and I put my toolboxes in the back of my truck and gave the guys hugs and left. And that was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Also. So, and he, as many negative things as I could say about that guy, when he gave me my last check, they gave me like an extra $1,000.
Yeah.
The relationship with him was weird. I thought a pretty decent working relationship with him. I worked hard for him. He paid me decent. He always took care of me, and he would do weird things like that. Like when we were pregnant with Rose, he knew I needed tires for my car, so he bought tires for my car. Which was awesome.
Yeah.
And when I left, he gave me an extra $1,000 on my last check. So there were a handful of things there that he did that were really, really cool. There were some things he did that were less cool, but we don't need to get into all that. But so I called the owner of the building that we ended up renting because I had done just enough scoping out, and I found one building that looked like it could have been a cool shop or a usable shop. So I called that guy on my way home and was like, "Hey, I'm ready to lease your building." And he's like, "Whoa, pump the brakes, kid." He's like,
"Can you?"
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do you have the money to? I'm like, "Yeah, and I gave him a little bit of the story, and he's like, "Let me think about it." Luckily, he did end up leasing me that building, which was a little hole in the wall place in the middle of downtown Suffolk that you couldn't pull a trailer in and turn around. You had to back a trailer in. And there's so much there, so many lessons learned in that place. But I got home and, I pulled in the driveway and Jerry Lynn's like, "Why are you here at, 10 o'clock in the morning?" And she sees the toolboxes in the back of my truck and she's like,
"Didn't go so well."
She's like, "Okay."
Or did go well.
Yeah. She's like, "Okay." And it was from that point on, it was like, "All right, God, here I am." I at this point, I want to say I trust you to provide because I have no other choice.
Yeah. And I want to pause that. Two things here that I think is really important is throughout this process that, you've gone through, something has been very steady. Your faith and your wife.
My wife, yes.
And we could go on a tangent about wives, but, I think it's important to note, like we talked about, what's important and what's prioritized. Now, while our work's really important, and like we're saying, Christian business and running a business, it's important to put the horse before the cart, right? And not to compare our wives to horses, but,
no.
It's what's important.
To be fair to her, this was not an easy thing for her.
Yeah, absolutely.
She struggled with this idea. And, at that point, we didn't know it yet, but she was pregnant with our second kid. And we had, in that time, that 3.5-ish years that I worked for Dan, we had, we moved to Virginia. We got married. We had a miscarriage shortly after getting married. That same guy that I worked for when I came back to work, the day or so, probably the day after finding out that we lost the baby, he told me that we were stupid for trying to have kids. Yeah. And there's a lot to that particular story, but so I guess I probably still hold a little bit of animosity. There. Then we had Rose, which was fantastic, and then we had another miscarriage. And then I opened this. I leave my job, so she had dealt with some some depression and some really difficult.
Rightfully so.
We were living in Suffolk. I was working in Norfolk.
Yeah.
So on a good day, it's a 35-minute drive with no traffic. And like I said, I was trying to be the first one there. So I'm leaving the house at 5:30 in the morning. I'm the last one to leave. So I'm not leaving the shop till 5:30, 6, sometimes later than that. So this poor woman is raising our first kid, which is, your first kid is scary. You have no idea what you're doing. She's alone. We've got my dad and my stepmom lived up the street from us at that point, but they both worked full time.
Yeah.
They weren't there. And I'm hardly ever there because I'm working so much.
Yeah.
So she was dealing with a lot, and it was very difficult for her.
Yeah.
But she still supported me when it was very, very difficult for her, when she could have said, "That's not something we can do right now. I can't handle you doing what it's going to take to do that right now." I'm sure she had those thoughts, but she still supported me.
Yeah.
And there's no way I could have done it if she hadn't.
Yeah.
So, and, we were Christian, we were Christians at that point. We were regularly attending church, and we had some level of support there. No, we did. We had good support there.
Yeah.
My church bought us groceries for a few months after
Yeah.
I left that job because we were so broke. But, I didn't. I was still learning the faith side of things. I had faith, I had trust, but I was still learning what all that meant.
Yeah. And I think too, how important our environments are to our Christian walk, right?
Yeah.
And you made a decision then because the environment was not where you wanted to be. You had goals of opening your own shop, but you took a step out, and you trusted in God to support you through that, and you trusted in your wife to help support you through that.
Yeah, and it was a necessary place for me to be for a time. I met, Walter, who became one of my best friends. I met him there.
Yeah.
I met several of my future employees
there.
I learned a lot about the industry there. Some good things, some bad things. I did learn some good things about business from Dan. I learned a lot of what I won't do there. And it was a net positive for sure. It was a struggle. It was tough, but it was a net positive.
Yeah. So fast forwarding a little bit, we're in your shop now, right?
Right. This is actually our third building.
Yeah. So let's talk about this building a little bit, and kind of where you're at now, as a little bit farther down the road, what are some of the struggles that you felt like running the business that ethically, as a Christian, you think you've ran into that might be productive to other Christian business owners?
So, some of the difficulties in my industry is, I suppose the same as everyone. It's time and money.
Yeah.
The way we bill in this industry is hourly.
Yeah.
We work for a set rate per hour. And the danger in that is, of course, you can milk your time, or you can say that it took more hours than it actually did. Or if you have employees, which I don't have a whole bunch of employees right now, but I have in the past, you and your customer have to know that the employee is putting good value-added time towards a project. Yeah. So one of the struggles has been, and I've always done the best I could with it, is making sure that the work that's being done is being done to a high enough standard, and our standard here is pretty high, and is being done in a timely enough fashion to where when I add up the time on that time card and it comes to 40 hours and I make that invoice for 40 hours, that all 40 of those hours are value added, necessary for the project. And there is difficulty there because guys, sometimes something doesn't get done right. The first, I get him.
I think you got him.
I got him. All right, good. He's been bugging me this whole time. Nat stole my train of thought.
Yeah, he stole it from you.
Sometimes you'll have an employee that's having a bad day, and the first 4 hours of the day, he did a job that could have been done in the first 15 minutes. And the way I do my billing, I give the customers a copy of the timesheet. We take notes through the day of what we did, your time in, your time out, all those things. And I give the customer a copy of that. So if they read it and they go, man, it took him 4 hours
to do something that should have been 15 minutes.
I think should have taken 15 minutes. Well, then it's on me to determine, okay, it took 4 hours because it was actually ended up being way more complicated than we thought it would be. And if it had been simple, it would have taken 15 minutes, but hey, it took 4 hours. It was 4 hours of genuine work. I can bill for those 4 hours. That's fair. Or was it 4 hours of head scratching?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. Or I had to do it again because I didn't do it right. So it's up to me to make that determination.
Yeah.
and I can make it either way.
Yeah.
So in the world where business is business, I paid that employee for 4 hours.
Yeah.
He worked on your project for 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I can bill you for that.
Yeah.
But should I?
Is it right?
Is it right? Yeah. Is that good value at a time? And, I've always done the best I could to make sure that I'm doing that. But every week, and even now, it's like I said, it's just me and one other guy here now.
Yeah.
I do it with my own time cards.
Yeah.
I'm reading and I'm like, okay, did this take the right amount of time? And I've been doing this a long time. I'm pretty good about my time's typically pretty value added. And Moose as well. But every time when I make that invoice, there's a little bit of anxiety there. Is this fair and honest and good?
Yeah.
Are we value adding to the project? And then, okay, how much do you mark up supplies and parts and materials? And like, okay, well, the industry standard is you can mark it up this much. I'm like, man, that seems unreasonable sometimes. And it's just tough. It's just a wrestle. And it's not, there's nothing wrong with making a profit. That's necessary. That's how I pay Moose. That's how I pay for the building. That's how I pay myself. But there is a little bit of wrestle there with, okay, am I charging fairly so that I can pay myself and Moose and all these other things? It's just a little bit of a struggle there. It always has been.
And I think too, speaking to how Christians should handle business, that was you properly seeding your Christian values in the way you carry your business. Because it could have been, I guess, the easy way out, like you said, just to bill it, and to prioritize the income and the revenue over whether it's ethical, whether you're holding to your Christian values. And I think that's probably the struggle that a lot of businesses have. And it's hard to say, like, you may be sacrificing income or business success for your values, but as a Christian, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I have done that.
Yeah.
And I'm somewhat in the middle of that now. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the right way to go all the time, because if my business fails, then, Moose doesn't have a job.
Yeah.
And my family's not provided for. So there is a balance there.
Absolutely.
For sure. And that's just one of the difficulties. And you've got employees. When I did have a crew of guys, and everybody that's ever worked for me has either been or become a friend.
Yeah.
That's just, you can't work this closely in this environment and not either become friends or enemies.
Yeah.
So when it came time towards the end of them working here, and I was one that made the decision to let my two main guys go. And that was a really hard decision. And I wrestled with that as a believer for a long time. And I'm not sure that I got it completely right. But, my job became, towards the end of them being here, my job became trying my best to keep them happy.
Yeah.
And, as a father, there are a lot of things that I do that I know my kids are not going to be happy about, but I do them because they're necessary. And I struggled to behave that same way here. I wanted to provide as much as I could to make them as happy as possible, but also wasn't making a lot of money because we were kind of working to make sure the payroll was paid. And there was just a lot of emotions, a lot of discontentment in the shop. This was, shortly post COVID, which had rippling effects on everybody's mentality. And I just, kind of made the decision, like, I just can't, it doesn't make sense in my mind for me to come into my business every day with the attitude of everybody here is miserable. Everybody here hates me.
Yeah.
Nothing I'm going to do is going to make them happy. How can I mitigate that as much as possible? And that was a difficult time because it was a tough place to be in. And I finally decided, I'm like, it just wasn't worth it anymore. I said, both of these guys are super talented. They're highly intelligent. They'd be sought after in the industry and in many other industries. I'm like, it's time for them to go somewhere else where they can be served better. And that was tough, man. That was not a fun conversation. But I think it was what needed to happen at the time.
And I think it speaks to, you're making decisions prayerfully and
Yeah.
and you care.
Very much so, especially in that case. And I wrestled with God over that one for a long time because I think I knew what needed to happen, but I didn't know the right way to do it. And I'm not sure that I don't know that I hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
With that one.
But I think one thing that's been evident with you and since I've known you is your genuine care for other people, whether that's your employees, your friends, people you interact with. And I think that is something that is a fruit of the Spirit for you that outpours from your Christian faith. And I think as business owners, that is something that separates you. I would only imagine that your employees would know that, whether, the stresses of day to day,
I don't
cause
know that
bitterness
they did
or whatever.
At that point. And I think that was part of that was part of my struggle then.
Yeah.
Was and this kind of leads into pride a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to provide them with things that I probably was overstretching myself to do, so that they knew how much I cared. Yeah. And I think, maybe in kind of a prideful way. Yeah. Like I want them to see me as this, I'm the one that's doing everything for them. Yeah. Even though it's, like selfishly sacrificing. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. I think pride, that's one we can hit quick too. Pride as a business owner. If y'all know Kyle or know his shop, like it's pretty impressive. You come in here, you see, I'm not like a car guy, but if you're a car guy, he's got.
That's why we're friends.
Yeah, that's probably why we're friends. Because you're probably right though. I can see where people would be drawn to the vanity and the pride side of things. You've got Ferraris and Porsches and American muscle cars out here that are.
I don't have any Porsches in the
shop. See, that's why I'm not a car guy. We've talked about Porsches, but my point is the pride that goes along with that, and in men especially, right? And you could be held up at this status, right? You could be held at this status among men of like Kyle does these really exceptional things for cars, which he does, but you have such a humble heart about it, and that's how I feel like we have to approach
and it
things
took some
like
time.
this.
It took some time to develop that because there is like pride is definitely something that I wrestle with. Pride is an easy one for me to fall into. Yeah. Which was, circle the whole everything back to jiu-jitsu, but which was one of the reasons why I fell in love with jiu-jitsu so fast. Is when I went to the gym, nobody cared what I did. Yeah. Nobody cared that I worked on fancy cars. Nobody cared that I owned a business. And it didn't matter. And the reality is, like, yes, we have Aston Martins and Rolls Royces and Ferraris in the shop. Also a Jeep Cherokee. We've got a little bit of everything in here, but it's not mine. Yeah. I don't own Rolls Royces and Astons and Ferraris. I literally swing a hammer, beat sheet metal until it looks like something else. Yeah. That's all I do. Yeah. I'm a carpenter for sheet metal. Yeah. Am I proud of the ability that I have, the skill that I have? Yes, God gave me that. It was a gift, and I'm thankful for it. But it's just a skill that I've worked hard to hone over the last 20 years. Just like if I had continued building houses, I'd be I'd be good at building houses. Not because I'm inherently special, just because I've put the time and work at it. You're good at what you do. Mm-hmm. Donnie's good at what he does, teaching at the gym. Everybody has their thing. So there's not a huge community of what we call metal shapers in this industry. And I don't know what the number is, but there's not a ton of them. Yeah. And we all know each other to some degree. And it is easy to kind of get high on your horse. Mm-hmm. I build these things it's so perfect and so wonderful. Yeah. It's like, dude, guys, we're all just cavemen. Yeah. Like I'm probably as close to caveman in modern day as you can get. Yeah. Like I literally swing a hammer for a living and melt metal together. And it's cool, but it's whatever.
Yeah. And I think it's from your story, from what you've told so far is your priorities have always been set. I'm sure there's parts that you veered off, but your priorities have always been on God. Your priorities have, not that they haven't had moments where, you've gone astray, but you've always made pivots with your family in mind, right? And I think that's how we need to run the businesses, and it's not to say that there's not going to be sacrifices that are made, but you've got to put that before the pride, the coolness, the financial success. And if that means pivoting or going a different direction, that's where it is. I mean, if you look at, now that I'm a part of this and a part of this, your story, right? We wouldn't have this podcast studio to be able to do what we're doing now without your skill set that you've acquired and the pivots you made that brought you here, right? So,
yeah, and again, that's a little offshoot into the pride side of things, but to keep it on, faith and running a business. One of the other difficulties is we deal with people, and we deal with we're not dealing with necessarily the same clientele that McDonald's is dealing with or Walmart's dealing with. The clientele that come in here they have to be pretty well to do to pay for what we do. And part of my job is selling our service. Yeah. So a lot of that is selling trust because, you're going to drop off we had a car in here at one point that I had to take out a rider insurance policy on my business insurance for multiple millions of dollars for this one specific car. Yeah. We don't have anything like that in the shop right now, but we did. So part of my job is I have to convince this person who's walking the door, doesn't know me from Adam, that I can be trusted with your project and I can be trusted with your money in such a way that or at least believe that I'm not going to take advantage of you and charge you unfairly. Yeah. So in that selling of service, I have to make sure that I am honest and truthful because it's very easy and very common in this industry to go, oh yeah, we can restore your car for X dollars, knowing I've never restored a car. For,
just committing to the,
we can do your whole project for $50,000, which to the average person, $50,000 sounds like a lot of money to put into a car. Okay, well, the average restoration, which we don't so much do full restorations, we do the metal work, we do the body and paint, I try and leave all the other stuff to somebody who's better at that stuff. But it's not uncommon at all to have a couple thousand hours in a project, man hours, physical man hours. So at, $85 an hour, we're talking six figures. Yeah. And having that conversation with somebody who just walked in off the street, who I don't know and who doesn't know me, and I'm like, hey man, it's going to cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this car. Yeah. And this is why you should trust me to do it. That's tough. It's really easy to go, I think we could probably get it for 40 to 60. And in my head, I'm like, I don't have x-ray vision, but I know what's going on under the paint you've got. I know there's going to be a lot of work there. Yeah. And this industry it's very common for that to be the conversation. Oh yeah, I think we can do it for this. And then, they said 50, 75 later. Yeah. You're going, well, crap, my car is in their shop in pieces.
What am I going to do?
What choice do I have? So when I opened up, that was one of the things I said, I'm never going to do that. And I won't tell somebody how much a project's going to cost because I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. It's all ours. And that's just one of those things that, it's tough.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what separates, a Christian business from a from a business that doesn't, prioritize those values is just that, there's so much dishonesty. Not saying that all businesses are dishonest.
No, of course not.
It's,
and it's a lot of times it's also not necessarily intentional. No. I hate to say it, but, it wouldn't be entirely dishonest for me to say, well, I don't know what it's going to cost, but I think we could probably do it for around this much. Yeah. And, I could probably justify that. Yeah. But, are we too deep in the gray area there?
Yeah. And those are like the questions that you talked about. You don't have all the answers.
Right.
But I think what is clear in Scripture is that you properly steward the resources that you have at your command or dominion, whatever word you want to use. Yeah. And I think that is the priority that you've set,
Yeah. And then you have the, luckily it's rare, but, on occasion someone's not happy.
Yeah.
So, how as a believer who's trying to image Christ deal with the person who comes back and is not happy with, generally it's the bill. Generally somebody thinks that they've been charged too much. I'm trying to think of a specific example. It hasn't happened very many times, so the times it's happened are in my head, so I don't want to, put out who it is or anything. But we did a project years and years ago, not in this building, in our last building, that didn't get very far. The truck came in, and I think we made it through disassembly and installing a handful of panels. I'm trying to be as vague here as possible. And when I sent the guy his bill, I didn't hear anything. And then he showed up to the shop with very obviously unhappy, handed me a check, shook his head, and walked away.
Yeah.
And I went, what just happened? And, I'm a fixer. I'm a fixer. I'm not a let's just grumpy face each other and not talk. I'm like, let's work it out.
Yeah.
So I tried to call him. He didn't answer.
Yeah.
Sent him a text. Didn't call me back. Now, I didn't want to hound this guy, but I wanted to know what was going on. And let me preface all this by saying I'm not so sure I made the right decision here. I made the decision that I made because I felt that it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally got a hold of him, and I said, hey, you are very obviously unhappy. What is it that we've done
that's made you
that's made you unhappy? And he said, I thought the whole project would cost this much. What you did is only, maybe a day's worth of work. And I'm like, well, no, it was worked on for a solid week. The work that was done required, and I laid it out the best I could. And I said, but, if you feel like you were charged unfairly, said I haven't deposited your check, I'll shred it.
Yeah.
You can come get your project, and that be that. Yeah. And I don't remember exactly how the rest of that conversation went. He was quiet. I don't think he was prepared for that. And I wasn't financially prepared for that. I mean, that was going to be a big deal. But I don't want your money if you think that I'm stealing from you.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long story short, we got back together, and that had really hit him hard. He'd never been approached like that before, and everything calmed down, and he understood. He came from a different industry where things are done differently and they're done crash, bang, hurried up. And we did not finish that truck. I think we finished that part of the project, and then it was like, hey man, I don't want to put you in a bind doing this. And we just agreed that it would be better to not finish it. But that was how I handled it. I was like, I don't want your money. I'll just shred it. And I don't remember I'm sure I did end up depositing the check after everything ironed out, but I don't remember that for sure. That was a tough one. It was like, what do I don't, we did work for that money. Like, it was earned.
Yeah.
But if I would have just cashed his check and gone about my business and let him been unhappy, we wouldn't have done anything wrong. You know, that work was honest. Yeah. It was fair.
And you prioritized your integrity, at that moment. Not that your integrity was really being questioned because you did that work. Yeah. But
it was. I mean,
your integrity was being questioned because he was saying that you were overcharging and didn't do the amount of work. If any of my
customers listen to this, we charge you honestly, so please don't.
Yeah. And that's your priority. That's your priority. And that's where I think the rubber meets the road of running a Christian business is prioritizing your integrity. Paul talks about that, and when he's doing mission work, and how he earns an income and how he protects his integrity by going out and working for his income versus being supplied for in his mission work, which he justifies that. He could be, but, he values his integrity and to not be a hypocrite, which we've talked about before. And your interactions with people when you run a business is part of your influence that you have.
Yeah.
And I know, I haven't interacted with anybody that you've done business with, but I know who you are as a Christian man, and I know that your impact is felt with the people you do business with.
I try, and the longer I've been in business, the more open I've been about having conversations with my customers about faith, and I wouldn't say I was ever intentionally not. But I don't know that I was seeking it out before.
Yeah.
But now, if I get the opportunity, and shoot, these guys that are paying me to do these projects, they're at least as far as the world is concerned, they're a handful of steps ahead of me, at least financially.
Yeah.
That's why they're here.
Yeah.
Which is great. It's good for them. It's good for my business, of course. So sometimes I'm sure it's easy to look at me like, okay, kid, you're going to try and give me advice.
Yeah.
But, I am more open about my faith now.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the little bit of, I'll cautiously use the word wisdom that I've gained over being a husband and a father for 16 years and running a business for over a decade. And, I have seen a little more life now than I had when I first opened up. And I feel like that gives me a little bit more weight to throw around, I guess. But, I do see people who are hurting.
Yeah.
Even these really wealthy guys that I don't think I have any right now that necessarily fall into this category, but I certainly have in the past had customers that all the money in the world, all the toys they could ever imagine, and they're in pain.
Yeah.
And in their heart.
Yeah.
And I can see that.
Yeah.
And I can see them reaching for worldly things. So, not that it's necessarily my place to say, hey, multimillionaire, that's bringing this 100 Air, your Ferrari or whatever to work on, I'm going to give you life advice. But sometimes I am called to do my best to plant a seed where I can.
And like you said, it's not your responsibility, but it's through your integrity, how you carry yourself, and your loving nature for your fellow man is where that comes from.
Yeah.
You see that on them, and that's how we are to interact with others, whether it be professionally or vocationally or whatever it is.
Well, and some of these guys that I get to work for are believers.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I don't even know that until I bring it up.
Yeah.
And then some of the conversations that I've got to have, again, with men that are further on in life, most of them are considerably older than me, and who have already had to wrestle with some of the things that I wrestle with in business. So I've had some great conversations with clients just because I, had the guts to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever had anybody be super offended. And if I did, well, so be it.
And I think that's with everyone sharing their faith and speaking, is you think that it's going to go a certain way, and it really usually doesn't, And I think a lot of our fear, I don't know what builds that fear, whether it's, pride or some type of preconceived notion of what we think that person's going to think of us, but we should be open because whether they're not a believer or whether they're a believer, there's only benefit from it. Right. And we're called to do it. We are. I'm not saying you have to, every single interaction you have, but there has to be.
I think it should be evident in your everyday life.
It should be.
And I started the habit a handful of months back of trying to always have my Bible within arm's reach.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble talking. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so if I'm a little bit nasally, that's why. I think it was, I don't remember who it was that mentioned it, but they mentioned that Phil Robertson, always had his Bible in an arm's reach. Yeah. And that really hit me. Like, we always have this thing within an arm's reach. Always. Yeah. So why not always have our this in an arm's reach too? Yeah. And I won't say it's always in arm's reach, but it's always with me in the shop. If I leave, I've got my Bible with me. If I come back into the office, I bring it with me. Yeah. When I'm working in the shop, it's there in the shop. And not that I'm taking big breaks in the middle of the day to read my Bible when I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be working on a project, but it's always there.
Yeah.
If I'm asked a question, if I'm talking to a customer and it gets brought up, it's right there. I can reference it. Carry it into the bathroom instead of your phone, because
that's a good
you're
one.
probably not going to doom scroll in the Bible for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I really doubt it. And it's just there. It's always there. So I've got, access to all the debauchery the world has to offer on this phone all day, every day. I also have access to the Word of God right here.
Yeah.
And I like my paper Bible instead of the digital Bible for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah.
But that has helped a little bit. And it also, I've been asked, what book is that?
Yeah.
Like, it's the Bible.
Yeah.
And then I get to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's a relatively new thing for me. I mean, for years and years, I had my Bible just open on my desk.
Yeah.
Because that's where I do most of my Bible reading.
Yeah.
So if somebody came into the office, it was obvious. It's there. It's open. I never closed that Bible.
Yeah.
But in the last, 6 months or so, I've made sure to always have it with me. And I have been in the Word more.
Yeah.
Because of that.
And that's good, actionable, advice and wisdom there. That's one thing that me being kind of a technology person, I've had to kind of come to terms with, because like you said, screen time, how much I use my phone compared to how much I'm in the Word. I mean, it's so easy to get to doom scroll, and the things that end up coming across that screen when you doom scroll are not things that are going to be helpful anyways. They're going to be hurtful, towards your Christian walk.
Even the best things.
Yeah.
I'll get Bible verses and things like that come across my Instagram feed and positive stories. And that's good. But is it as good as what I'm going to get from Bible? So there's no comparison there.
No.
But we still do it.
We still do it.
I mean, I still have Instagram on my phone.
Yep.
I'm just spending less time in it now than I was.
And I think it has a time and place, just like all tools do. You can use a hammer to make beautiful things, to build houses, to, build cars, to build all types of things where you can smash somebody's head with it, right?
And sometimes that's tempting too.
Yeah, that's true. But, well, let's kind of bring it to a head and finish it up with maybe some advice to somebody that's in business that is struggling a little bit as far as their faith goes.
Yeah. Advice to me a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll just give the advice that I was given. You have to put your faith in Christ to provide for you and your family and your business. And that doesn't mean don't work hard. That doesn't mean that you can just let it slide away. But take on the burden that has been given to you with joy and thankfulness. Get in your Word, get in the Word every morning, and pray every morning. And start your prayer with thankfulness.
Yeah.
Be grateful for the business that God has given you, has allowed you to create and sustain as much as it sustains. And if you are oriented properly, then whatever happens will be the best thing that can happen.
Yeah.
So if my faith is fully in Christ and I trust in Him entirely to provide for me and my family, and I do the work that He has given me to do, if this business fails, it's because that was His plan and He has something better for me.
Yeah.
And I will accept that as a gift, as every other gift He has given. Yeah. Now, I will work myself as hard as I can to avoid that, of course. As long as He gives me work to do, I will do it diligently to the best of my ability. But at the end of the day, it is His decision, His perfect plan, and His perfect will, and I will accept it and be grateful for it. So, as a leader in your home, as a leader in your business, what does it say here? Let's go back to the Word. Masters, treat your bondservants justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. Bosses, business owners, leaders, treat your employees justly, treat your clients justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven.
Absolutely. I don't think it could be said better.
It's good because I didn't say it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, well, there'll be more to be talked about on that topic, I think, in future episodes. But I think we got some wisdom out of you of what it really is to run a business as a Christian and really hold to your Christian values and not get lost in it.
That's all I got. I hope it wasn't like trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip.
No, it was good. It was good. Well, this has been Iron and Grace. Till next time.
Have a good one.